Right, so I've got the shell here, and now I want to set up a massing model that you can use for a master plan. And so it's worth just putting a bit of thought into the way that you might have your spaces broken up and then model the masses accordingly. So the massing tool is pretty versatile in Revit, but there are limits to what you can do with it, and breaking up masses can be a bit tricky. So it's probably an idea to have a mass for each level rather than trying to model the whole space and then break it up afterwards, because that can be pretty tricky. If you have the same function spread across multiple levels, you can always try to join those masses together later, or at least have them read with the same materials. Okay, so just to get you started with the massing tool, in the ground floor plan, I think I'll go and make my first mass. And so for this, I'm going to use in-place masses. So on the Massing and Site tab, you've got in-place mass. And it's told me that I'm turning on mass visibility, so that's fine. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to call this Master Plan Mass. And then I'm going to use pick lines and just pick the inside face of all of those walls. So I'm making sure I don't get the grids or anything else by mistake. You could probably use tab here, but doesn't hurt to go around and pick each thing individually. And so there you can see it's a bit hard to see my mass now because the walls are hiding it. So what I'm going to attempt to do now is a floor plan just for my massing. So I'm going to duplicate this view. Oh, now, sorry, I can't do that yet because I've got to finish the mass. So I'm going to just finish the mass temporarily, and it will tell me the mass contains no solid geometry. Don't worry about that. I've just done it so that I can create a view by duplicating my ground floor plan. And then I'm going to go into visibility graphics overrides and go through and select everything except for my mass using Shift there and turn off the tick box, and then the same for everything below the mass. And then in annotation categories, well, I'll come back and do those individually. That will just make it easier for the model categories. There aren't as many annotation categories, so I can just hide them individually. So the grids, remember VH is the shortcut to hide category. You can also right-click and choose Hide in View Category, does the same thing. And I don't really even need the views here, so I'll hide those. The sections, no, I think I'll hide those too. Okay, so then now all I can see are the things that are part of my mass family. So I can select that more easily and then go back to Edit and Place and continue modifying it, so I can join those lines together using Trim. So I've got a mass set up for the ground floor. Now I'm going to select it and use the Create Form tool to make that into a solid. So remember, with massing, you don't have Extrude or Revolve or Sweep or any of those tools. You do everything using Create Form. And it works really well once you get used to it. So you've got two options there, solid form or void form. In this case, I'll use solid form. So that's now a 3D object. We can't see the height until we go to a 3D view, so I'll go to do that now. And so it's gone up as high as the building. I'm going to bring that down, but before I do that, I'll need to know the height of this floor. So again, I'm going to finish the mass and just go back and check that. So the height of the first floor is 4,800, so I'm going to go into my section view and make level 1 have that height. And of course the floor will go with it. Now, is that floor, why is that not showing correctly? That's black, solid. Okay, we'll worry about that later. There's something wrong with my floor display there. And then, oh, so it's because I've got a mass over the top of it, that's why. Okay, so then the top of the wall is 80 something. So here, the top of wall will be here, down to this corner, 8060. Okay, so put that in. Okay, so it's important to make sure that everything attached to those has gone together. So the trusses there should go with the top of the wall level. And then you can see my mass element is still there. And I'm going to select it now in this view, go to Edit and Place, and then to bring the top down, you need to make sure you select the surface on the top. I can do that in this view, and then I can either type in the measurement there, or simply click and drag to have that snap to the floor. You can even lock that to the level, which could be useful and really sensible actually, so I might do that. So if my level changes again, the mass will go with it. Okay, so you can see there again my mass is covering up that floor. And so another thing that you need to know when you start working with massing is that the visibility can be controlled in the visibility graphics section, where you'll see that you have an option there for mass. But notice that it is turned off in this view. You can still see it though, because you have this other option on the Massing and Site tab to show and hide the mass. So that's a toggle that toggles it on and off. And that's really useful, particularly when you start working with views where you want to see the mass and everything else together. So again, I've got my 3D view here, and I'm going to duplicate this view just to show you a couple of other little things. So I'll make this into a section box view. So I'm just going to call this SB1 or something. Turn on section box, and then cut away so I can see inside the building. And you can see again that the mass object is there, and I can toggle that on and off in this view. But now I'm going to duplicate the original 3D view again, and this time call it maybe 3D massing. And in this view, I'm going to go to Visibility Graphics, and just like the plan, manually turn everything off, turn the massing on, so I can see just my mass elements there. And now, if I toggle this option, the massing is going to stay there. Okay, so if you turn the massing on in here, tick that mass option, your mass will always stay. Alright, so now I can go back to level 1 and do the same thing. So I'm as on the ground floor. So I'm going to first actually select my mass here, because it's an easy view to select it in, go to Edit and Place, and then keep adding to it by going to level 1. You can then go and create lines again, so just using pick lines there. I might ignore the piers for now and just use tab to try and get, well, it's not giving me a very good chain, so I think it's easier just to pick each wall individually. And again, I'll have a look in my 3D massing view to see those lines. It's essentially just a rectangle. You've got to make sure it's a closed shape, and then create the solid form. So that gives me a mass of the whole envelope of the building, or the interior anyway. And again, in the section view, I can drag that top surface to line up with the level. So then things become a little bit more tricky because we've got this area in the, the void space above where the ceiling would have been originally. The ceiling would have been down here, and then they've got this void inside that truss. And I want to attempt to include that in the interior space. So I'm going to model another mass for that. And so I'm going to use pick lines here. And you can see then that it'll ask you to define a plane. If you try to draw in a section view, there's no plane defined by default. But I can use pick a plane, click OK. And I might use the surface of that parapet wall. So I'm just using tab there to get it to go to the surface that's facing me. And now I can simply pick the bottom of the truss and my edge of my level, and then use trimmed corner to join those lines together. It's pretty good. Finish mass, and again I'm going to check it in my 3D view. So you can see there, oops, sorry, I've finished the mass, so create object. So I finished the mass, that's fine. I can just select it now and go back to edit and place. And then I can select my triangle. And if I use create form, solid form now, it'll extrude that sideways instead of extruding it up because I've drawn that shape at that angle. So it determines the direction that it'll extrude things based on the plane you've drawn it in. So I can extrude that and then afterwards extend it to make it snap to the back there. So that gives me a basic shell, and to make that read as one object, I could then use join and join all those together. So that gives me a very rough interior form. And you could even start breaking that up. So if you had an idea maybe for a central access way or something like that that you wanted to have as a void space, you could then project that through this area. I'll show you next week how you can maybe break it up and have different zones and things like that. That would be done a bit differently. So if you wanted this sort of effect where you have that really nice zone within the void there, that could work well. But again, that's something we'll look at later. So what I might need now, like I said, is just try and get an interior that is a void. So here my ground floor plan set up for massing should work really well. And so I'm just going to go back to the Create tab, draw some more lines. Make sure as you're doing this that you're having a look at the plane. It should be on work plane, but if it goes to draw on face, that'll create some problems because it'll choose a face that you pick. Usually at first you won't want that. So draw on work plane is generally a better option. And then you've got the plane here. So ground floor is what I want. And don't use 3D snapping. So I'm going to just draw, actually might even switch to my other floor plan to get an idea where this entry is. So back to lines, it's okay. And I'm just going to draw from here, coming across, going to make it a little bit interesting and do something at an angle. And then come back this way and try and keep it, get it perpendicular to the line I've just drawn. So that's my idea. I've got this right angle that I want to have projecting through the space. Maybe I'll just move that line a little bit. And actually, just to show you what I did there, when you select a shape like this, it'll often be connected, so those two lines automatically are joined together. Now I can select the two of them together just by clicking, but if I click again on one of them, it'll select that line individually. So I can then move it without moving the other one. And now go back to the line tool and draw in something else. So I want to have a connection here to the to the rear. So I'm going to draw a line just from there, and again try and get it to go perpendicular to my the line that I'm projecting from. Yep, that's about right. I want to move that across, make it an even distance, so 3,000 something, maybe even less, 2,500. Yep. And so I might now copy that, so I can just select it and then use the copy tool and follow along that edge there. 3 metres, yeah, I want a fairly wide passageway. And then I'll have just a access way down here as well. So I'm going to draw another line, maybe following along that wall, and make that 1100 should be okay. So that's really the basis for all the other lines, and then I can maybe use offset. So you've got all these standard drawing tools, hopefully you're used to using those. 3,000. Oops. The copy option needs to be turned on there if you don't want to lose the original lines. And then trim and all those other options work just like normal. Yep, there we are. Okay, so that's the basis for my my void, and then I'm just going to join the ends using lines to make this into a closed shape. If it's not closed, it won't work properly. Okay, so it's just like making an extrusion. So again, here I've drawn the basis for my shape, and now back into maybe the 3D massing view, just so it's a bit clearer. I'll use void form instead of solid form. And here, I'm just going to make sure it only goes through the bottom level. So I'm going to just click and drag, and or maybe just to make it interesting for now, I'll take it through to the level above as well. Later, I'll show you how you can reduce that if you decide you only want it to go through one level. But that might give you a starting point for your master plans. So you can just do block models of things, and so if you know that there are different zones, say different functions like office and showroom or retail or something like that, then use different masses for each of those, and that way you can easily set different materials as well. So these are joined together, and if I go now to unjoin, because that is a separate solid, I can assign a material to it just like anything else. So you'll see there's a default massing material, and so you've got a few of them, these default, you can see all these default massing materials. So you can start with those, or here I'm just going to use this default mass zone and then duplicate and call it, well, let's just make it default mass zone 1, and then I'm going to check the transparency of that. That's done. Here, that's all good. And just maybe change the colour to something else. Let's make it shade of red so it stands out. Okay, so that way you can have different areas defined as different colours. I've got to check. I didn't change the render appearance. So that colour, what was it? 255, 74, 74. Right. Duplicate that, and then match that colour. There we go. That's better. Right, so if you had different zones on that level, you'd want a different mass for each one. So that's one way of doing your massing models. And then later you can definitely even turn those surfaces into walls or other things. And it's a quick way of getting detail in there.